data is understated because he's looking at his own particular market and not the entire country. So it does not reflect reality on his ground, on the ground in his own area. If in the first year, Mr. Company A, and assuming there are two companies, records a GDP of 10 million, and Company B a value added of 10 million, and Company B a value added of 20, having a total GDP of 10, having a total GDP of 20. And in the second year, Company A records 50 million, while Company B records 0 and closes down. The total GDP has risen from 20, when they were both getting 10, to 50, despite the fact that one company has closed. These are the things we have to be very careful misinterpret. And it's a trend that is giving us a lot of worry as far as the National Bureau of Statistics. And I repeat, I think we should never replace ideology with data. And I read a recent article on Bloomberg on the exact same thing, which convenes my advice and appeal. It was written by Emi Nakamura, and it's titled, "Don't Replace Data with Ideology." The authors are discussing the importance of data, ensuring national statistical offices are not tampered with and allowed to maintain professional independence and so on. The growing attention to Africa and Nigeria in particular has led to a greater attention to statistics in Africa, forcing our countries to recalibrate our statistical offices. Like I said, this is more about the ability of the statistics office to measure better across all indicators, and not just about the rebasing of GDP, which is just one of many. I can illustrate the sheer enormity of the demand of statistics by these facts that are on the screen from MBS. As shown on the slide, the number of reports downloaded from our website increased from about 48,000 to over 1 million between 2005 and 2012. Similarly, the number of requests for data made at our office grew from 23 in 2005 to 334, 12 years later. The number of hits on our website from 36,000 to over 4 million in 12 years. What this illustrates is a considerable growth in interest in Nigeria's data in recent times, as well as the impact of improvement in online tools and social networks in the dissemination of data. Now, I'm going to go very quickly through what I think is driving this demand for data. I break it down into, I explain it into both endogenous factors. The endogenous factors are driven by declining opportunities, worsened by the global economic crisis in advanced countries, forcing them to look elsewhere for opportunities for data. And the endogenous factors are driven by four main factors. Firstly, Nigeria has returned to democracy since 1993 after 3 decades of military rule. The resulting effect was an increased demand for accountability and good governance backed by evidence. Thirdly, the country returned to strategic planning, and as we know, data is the effective planning. And finally, there is a paradigm shift to result-based management from financial to output performance measurement. So what's GDP? The gross domestic product is the market value of all officially recognized final goods and services produced within a country in a given period. It therefore measures overall economic activity and signals the direction of economic growth and welfare. It is also seen as a barometer to measure the health of the economy. Now, GDP can be measured in 3 ways: the output or production approach, the expenditure approach, and the income approach. And not to bore you with too much detail, I won't go into the way it is calculated. Like the CME said, we have a very detailed methodology on our website for those that are interested in understanding how the details and how we calculate GDP. But let me explain how it works in a very basic way for those of us that are not really national account experts, economists, or are not really familiar with the concept of GDP, because whereas there are some here that understand it, others don't. So I'm doing this for the benefit of others, but in a very basic way. Why do we track GDP growth? Theoretically, there should be equilibrium. Production or supply will always be equal to demand. So producers only produce more in response to increase in demand from suggests that people are demanding and thereby consuming more. And for them to demand or consume more, it means that their ability to consume or to purchase those goods or services are increasing, which signals improving welfare. The only weakness with the GDP is that it does not take inequality into consideration. So a few people might be responsible for that increase in demand overall. What is GDP rebasing? I can explain this very technically or very simply, and I would choose to explain this very simply with an example. When I was, or with a story, when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, I think I watched my first basketball match, and I enjoyed it. And I wanted to grow very tall. So I started consuming a lot of proteins, consumed as much beans and milk as I could. Well, obviously it did not work, but I wanted to grow very tall. And every morning, to the annoyance of my parents, I would go to the wall, I'd take a pencil, put my back to the wall, and start trying to measure how much I've grown from day 1 to day 2. And my height kept changing. It would be 5'1" this morning, 4'9" the next day, 5'2" the third day. And I kept wondering why my height kept going up and down, fluctuating. But when I went to the hospital, because my parents were working in the hospital, I went to the hospital, and of course I was friendly with the nurses. They kept measuring me, and it was 5. Every time I went to the hospital, it was 5. But when I went back home, it went to 5'9", 5'1", 5'2". That's the best way to explain what rebasing is. It's about measuring correctly. My height was always 5, whether I measured it at home or at the hospital. But I just didn't know it. I wasn't sure. It's all about measuring my height correctly. So rebasing does not change what was already there. It's just about measuring better and more accurately. So regardless of whatever the numbers are, whether they went up or went down, it does not mean that within 24 hours, something miraculous has happened, and we are better off or worse off. There's a Chinese proverb that I enjoy. I think the translation is literally means "look in the pot," and it's about the story of a young man who inherited a vase from his uncle. Very pretty, and he loved it. He put it on his table, and kept looking at it every morning. And he was struggling. He wasn't a very rich man, and he continued struggling until he died. And it was after he died that his family now looked into the vase and found that it was filled with gold. That, again, as a way of explaining what rebasing is. It tells you exactly the structure of your economy, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. It does not, the man was already a rich man, he just did not know it. And you can walk the other way around. It tells us our strengths, it tells us our weaknesses. That is the way I'm going to try to explain rebasing. I don't want to go into the technical details, so I don't bore you too much. So I'll move very, very quickly past the key benefits. I think the CME and the National Planning Minister has explained that. To the next slide that shows you the outcome of rebasing. Now, when we started this work, we were very concerned. We just wanted to get our numbers right. So we surveyed some other countries that had done similar exercises, and we observed that their GDP changed from negative 10% to as high as positive 70%. And of course, it meant that this could go in any direction. But our focus as far as the Bureau of Statistics is concerned is we have to get our numbers correct, regardless of what direction it went. Now you can see the chart on the